Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We all know why we're here. Obviously, tonight, for the first time in 3 years, because our town budget went down on the first referendum, we're here tonight and live on Channel 17 to listen to your concerns. Usually, I do a lot of my speaking from the heart, but since I know most of you and I've talked to a lot of you here, I've actually written down a few notes because I don't want to miss anything for the viewers at home. We'll start this program off by listening to our elected officials. These elected volunteers are our neighbors. They live in Monroe, and though diverse in some ideas, they too want the best community possible. I want to take this time to thank our elected officials for the many hours they took scouring over this budget in very public forums. At this time, I would like to thank our staffs and for both the town and the Board of Education for being here tonight. These are the people that work with us every day to make a great community, and my hat's off to them. They're doing the best they can for our residents and our students. After our elected officials speak, we'll have time for the public to voice your concerns also. There are a couple rules. Every speaker must come up to the microphone right over here and state your name and address. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. You must be respectful of all the speakers. Please, no disrespectful sounds or call-outs. There will be no questions and answers in this session tonight, but if you have any questions at all, please feel free to, as many of you have and continue to do, email me at sfaverick@monroect.org, and I'm sure Mr. Augustine will say the same. Speaking of disrespect, on behalf of our town, I would publicly like to say to our longtime town residents and volunteers, Ken and Barbara Waite, how sorry I am for the way you've been treated in our community. Nobody deserves that type of really relentless going on. Ken and Barbara have spent a long time in our community, have volunteered many things, and just God bless anybody in our world who has never made a mistake or misspoke. So anybody who, again, hides behind an anonymous name on any forum or blogs, you should be, I just feel sorry for you. If you come up with your names and have a respectful dialogue, we can respect that. Again, we can agree to disagree, but we always must be respectful of people's views. Before we start, I'd like to show you our recent budget mill rate history. A lot of times we've discussed what exactly it is our budget increases are. And a few people got upset at the mill rate this year being 4.24. In my administration, the biggest non-negotiable things we'll discuss in a second, but let me just show you a little history. In 2005-2006 budget, 4 referendums, a 5.11 mill rate increase. 2006-2007, 4 referendums, an 8.44 mill rate increase. In 2007-2008, after 6 budget referendums, a 5.14% mill rate increase. 2008-2009, 2 times, 4.60. 2009-2010, a 2.86 mill rate increase after 3 referendums and a recount. 2010-2011, we had reval. We all know there was a couple problems there. We got it fixed. Bottom line, our mill rate did go down. 2011-2012, a 1.88 mill rate increase the first time out. Last year, 1.63 mill rate, again, the first time out. Being here tonight, again, you see that we used to go over multiple referendums. The one thing is clear. Up till a few years ago, we weren't fixing roads. We weren't maintaining our buildings. God forbid we had a tragedy. But our biggest non-negotiable drivers this year are student resource officers and security, mainly driven by the tragic events of 12/14. In this budget, the need for certified equipment for our first responders, we had to do that. God forbid you have a fire or something happens to your house and they can't get there with certified life equipment. That's costly, and it's something that can't come out, neither can the first two. Ongoing road and building maintenance programs. As I said, we had much higher mill rate increases and never, ever addressed our infrastructure. That has got to stop. That's one thing that this budget does do and will continue to do with your support. Another driver that many surrounding towns have, and it is shown to increase our property values, which we all want, is full-day kindergarten. I'm vowing to keep that in this time. I'm hoping that Mr. Augustine does too. The bottom line is we need your vote on Tuesday, April 23rd. I thank you all for your comments and support. Next, I am very proud to introduce and happy to introduce our Superintendent, James Augustine. Jim has been a tremendous partner through this whole process. Thank you, Mr. Augustine.
Thank you, Steve, and I'm very pleased to be here and participate in this. What I'd like to say is that the Board of Education has been a very responsible adjunct to the whole budget process. Our initial budget increase for next year over last year's spending originally was a 3.99% increase. Even at that, we felt that that was a lean budget. The key driver in there was the medical reserve, full-day kindergarten, contractual increases in transportation were the key drivers. But what's important to recognize is that this Board of Education worked very diligently with me, and together we reduced that budget significantly over the course of the budget process. The Board of Finance contributed as well in helping to shape that towards the end, and we ended up with a 1.75% increase in our spending over last year. That on the heels of 2 years of a 0% increase. I know the sentiment out there is that, you know, with a decreasing enrollment, how can a budget continue to rise? Well, because fixed costs are not so fixed, basically. Costs continue to rise, fuel, electricity, all of those drivers, in addition to, you know, instructional supplies. Throughout the entire recession period, I have not seen you know, a purveyor of goods and services decrease their pricing. Everything has continued to go up. This is the first time in the course of Monroe's history that we actually have the space. We do not need to build extra space in order to house full-day kindergarten. That, taken in light of the fact that we also have a state-mandated Common Core state standards to implement. These Common Core state standards are designed for full-day kindergarten. If we don't provide that, ultimately we will be about 50% behind those towns throughout the state of Connecticut that offer full-day K. Excuse me. Steve mentioned the SRO officers. The SRO officers are on the town side of the budget. They're not part of the Board of Education increase. And there is money for some structural enhancements of our buildings for security as well on the town side of the budget. What we have learned in the unfortunate events that happened in Newtown and the 43 other school shootings that have happened since Columbine, it's easy to forget that there were 43 other school shootings in this country. But we've learned a lot in that time. And one of the things that we have learned, that law enforcement has learned, is that the quicker an intruder or a shooter is confronted, the quicker the tragedy ends. Two things happen when the shooter is confronted. One of them is they commit suicide or they flee. In the 4 minutes or so that it took responders to get to Sandy Hook School, nearly 200 bullets were fired. The whole point of having an SRO in the building is to stop the carnage and eliminate the response time. We have invested heavily in electronic surveillance and the ability to monitor our schools, to keep our doors locked, to create environments where we have panic buttons now in schools so that we reduce the response time, but there's nothing like having an officer present. If you had asked me 5 years ago my opinion of police in schools, I would have thought that the middle school and high school SROs would have been sufficient. In light of the tragedy that still, the events still are unfolding to us, I cannot recommend going forward without having that kind of support in our schools until we are absolutely convinced that our structural enhancement and our electronic enhancements can absolutely guarantee safety and security in our buildings. The Board of Education also you know, they've taken this budget seriously, not from the start of this budget cycle, but from the start of many budget cycles ago, where they have embarked on a process of cost containment. And to that end, they have negotiated settlements with our 7 unions. They have negotiated settlements with 0% increases built into every single one of those unions in the past 3 years. They have moved all of the employees to an HSA, HRA, health savings account. We fund our own medical reserve. We are self-insured. There are numerous accounts of where the board has driven cost containment measures. One of those measures was to eliminate in the teacher's contract, for instance, a medical reserve, a medical payout upon retirement, a cost share of their medical insurance. It cost the board $375,000 3 years ago to sunset that clause in the teacher's contract. The estimated cost avoidance, the cost of that was over $6 million that this board has saved future generations of citizens of the town of Monroe. Those kinds of things don't happen serendipitously. They happen because the Board of Education is focused on cost containment and making sure that we spend our money wisely. And I'm very happy to say that through our process, we feel that the Board of Education budget, the 1.75% increase that's proposed for next year, is fiscally sound. We're not asking for things that we don't need. We're asking for what we need to bring our school system to the next level, and that's it. There is no fluff. You run a risk in any budget referendum process in any town, and that is you can take 2 approaches. One of them is to come in with an inflated budget and let the referendum winnow that budget down. This board and I did not do that. We came in with what we consider to be a lean budget right from the get-go, and consequently, subsequent referenda, if we're forced to reduce, we really start digging into some of those enhancements that we have for next year in the form of full-day K or in class sizes, that kind of thing. So we did not play that game of starting high and settling at some middle ground. That was not the intent. And to that end, we have surveyed the school population of parents to try to understand better what they perceive are the things that they want to support in the budget and things that maybe aren't so supported. And quite honestly, the vast majority of people support the initiatives that we have in place. Up to 75% of the nearly 500% respondents favored the full day K and favored the SRO officers, in addition to the Common Core and the other initiatives that we have. So my hat's off to the Board of Education for their diligence in helping to contain costs in the future, and also to the Board of Finance, who worked very collaboratively with us at the end as we monitored our medical reserve and chose to reduce our funding in the medical reserve next year. That cut was almost $500,000 in addition to $223,000 in energy savings that we hope the Honeywell project will bring to us. So those are my comments. Thank you.
And at this time, we have the Board of Education. What's going to happen is first the Board of Education will speak. The members are here tonight. Then the Town Council will come up and speak. Then the Board of Finance. Afterwards, the public will come up and sit right at that microphone right over there, right across from Jeff Gutman, and tell us give us your public input. So, Board of Education, thank you very much. Introduce yourself and make any comments if you'd like.
Mark Hughes, Secretary of the Board of Education. I think that we, as Mr. Augustine mentioned, we put out a very lean budget, and Mr. First Selectman, you need to cut as little as possible from it going forward. You found that it was an acceptable budget the first time around, so you should, I would think, consider it an acceptable budget now going forward. Thank you.
Mark Antonazzi. I'm a member of the Board of Education. You know, people who look to Monroe, maybe coming up to move here and start a family, one of the most important aspects of their choice would be what type of school system is provided. Now, in my opinion, being a former educator, I can tell you that this school system is excellent. It's perhaps one of the finest, most progressive, most competent school systems I have ever experienced. Unfortunately, there are unfunded mandates, such as requirements to comply with the Common Core, also requirements to implement both teacher and administrator evaluations. You have escalating expenses, such as bargaining unit salary increases, health insurance increases, heating and maintenance expenses, all things that we really have no control over. These are set in stone. If an arbitrator tells us we have to give an increase to the teachers, we have to do it. If the state says we must implement the Common Core, we must do it. We have no choices. And all these add to the cost of running a school system. Now, I tell you, I represent the Monroe Board down at CES, which of course is comprised of many of the different regional school systems. All of them are feeling the crunch. All of them are saying that it's very difficult to pass a budget. So we're not alone in this. But I'll tell you something, this school system has probably the best offerings for our children, both from the elementary school, through the middle school, through the high school, that I have ever seen. And being part of the curriculum committee, I see this happening each week, or each month we have this meeting. And I'm just totally amazed at the professionalism of our teachers and of our administrators to provide the very, very, very best education for our kids. And see, this is what brings people to Monroe. Our school system needs to be high standard. It cannot afford to slip. And if it does, it's going to hurt all the town, regardless of your economic or age requirements. Now, I'm a senior citizen, and I fully support education. I understand, though, that there are many of us who have difficulties paying the additional taxes. I understand it. My heart goes out to you. But we have to look at the long picture. If you have a house, and if you're looking at maybe possibly selling it, maybe a young family will move in. But they won't move in unless you have a school system that's top-notch. Why do you think people move to Westport? Not because they want to pay a lot of money for their homes. They move there because it's an excellent school system. Same thing for Weston and Wilton and Trumbull and Avon. We have to look at the big picture here. And to take any money out of our school system can do nothing but harm the school system. So please keep as much as we can in the budget. It's a lean, absolutely lean, bare bone, no blood budget. And our superintendent has done an admirable job in presenting it. Thank you.
You.
Alan Vaglavello, Board of Education. Like Mark just said, I think we put out a really lean budget. I just wanted to clear up a couple things that a lot of rumors on social media, like Steve was saying, one of them about kindergarten, the new kindergarten curriculum. It's going to be, the new Common Core curriculum is going to be rolled out in 2014. And there's a lot of rumors and a lot of people saying, well, we don't need full day K because full day K is about coloring and drawing, and that's just not true anymore. With the Common Core curriculum, we're going to expect students to do reading, writing. They're going to have to basically perform on a first grade level. And we need these students in their full day, or like Mr. Augustine said, they'll be at least 50% behind their peers. So the kindergartners are expected to do first grade work, and the first graders are going to be expected to do second grade work. So it's really going to notch up the whole curriculum throughout the K through 12 grades. Another thing is class size. It's really important that we maintain class sizes the way they are, because currently the way we teach is we do mainstreaming, where special education students come in and they're educated with their regular ed peers. We have about 10% of our student population is receiving special education services, when special ed just means specialized instruction. And we have another 20% of students who get intensive intervention from the classroom teacher. That could be small groups of 3, it could be one-on-one. So we have a lot of needs in our classroom, and if you increase class size, these students are really going to struggle, and you're really not saving money by increasing class size, because it's going to drive up special education costs. So class sizes go up, special education costs tend to go up with that as well. And special ed is mandatory, so special ed is something we have to pay for. And that's, I mean, after 2 years of zero, I think, you know, the increase we put together this year is very reasonable, and I stand behind it. Thank you.
Daryl?
Daryl Trump, Chairman of the Board. I wanted to echo some of your sentiments, Steve, to start out in terms of support of our elected officials, and of course to compliment each of our elected officials for putting themselves in their positions, and for the time and dedication that they provide to this town. Particularly for this budget process, to me, it's been very non-eventful. This is probably one of the most collaborative years that I've ever seen. But particularly between Mr. Agustin and Mr. Reed and the Board of Finance, they've worked hand in hand. There's been really no serious battles at all in respect to everyone working together through this whole process. Even the amounts that were deducted from our original adopted budget was a collaborative process based upon agreements between the Board of Finance and Board of Education in terms of where we were going to end up and the real need that we would have in the Medical Reserves Fund. Just to remind everyone as to really what our cost drivers are, and Mr. Agustin did speak to these, however, there's no surprise what makes up that final 1.7% that's in our budget at this point in time. The biggest driver, of course, has already been mentioned. It's our contractual salary obligations at a little over $500,000. We have $156,000 that's in our budget for these redo of our bargaining unit negotiations this year. The financial impact of adopting full day kindergarten is $193,000. There's $267,000 in transportation costs and $115,000 associated
Seat next to me.
with the this TSA account that, again, Mr. Agustin's already spoken to. One of the other things that we did, Jim also mentioned, is that we ran a survey out to all of the parents. And there's a couple of very interesting things that I took in terms of takeaways from this survey. The first one is that 84% of the parents supported our budget at the 1.75% basis. And in terms of the cost drivers, 78% supported full-day kindergarten, 91% supported the security initiatives, 95% felt it was important to maintain our class size, and 77% supported the school resource officers in every school. So I think our parents do support our budget. I mean, those are pretty staggering numbers in terms of support. What I would suggest is that what we need to do is we need to get all the parents out to vote. So if you have students in our system here, or you were a student, or you support the education system, please come out and vote on the next referendum. I think that's critically important. So the bottom line from my perspective is that we wouldn't want to reduce the budget. I would say to put it back out again. Let's just get the right people out so that we can get this thing passed.
Jeff Gutman, Board of Ed member. I'd first like to start off by saying that we're all very fortunate that we were able to hire Jim Agostine as our superintendent. He has been very fiscally responsible in looking over the budget, and he really gave it his due diligence to put out, as he said, a very lean budget. I, for one, when I first came to the Board of Ed, I didn't come for the curriculum, and I didn't come to make sure that your kids are being taught properly. I came for the reason of fiscal responsibility. And I'm very happy to say that I've been able to obtain that with Jim at our helm. It's been a very easy process to work with him because he takes everybody's suggestions in and he vets everything out. And we know about everything he's going to do. Everything is fully discussed. Everything is fully disclosed. And also, it was, as Darrell said, it was very good that we were able to talk with the Board of Finance. And Jim also had his meetings with the Board of Finance and Steve, and we knew about everything that was being discussed. So when we put out our budget, it was put out well. And I have to really commend Jim and John and Gabby and everybody that really put out this budget, because it's a lot of work. It's 75% of the town's money that's going out there, and that's for the Board of Ed. So I have to say, really, you did a great job, and I fully support your budget as it goes out. And I will piggyback what Darrell has to say, and I wouldn't reduce the Board of Ed side at all. Not because we need more money to teach or more money for, we need the money that we have in there to make things work. As we said, we had 2 zeros and 1.75. And we have, contractual bargaining units that we have to deal with. We have our cost that went up. Everything goes up, just like running a home. Your electricity went up, well, so did the schools. Your oil went up, well, so did the schools. And the money has to come from somewhere, and it has to come from all of us as citizens of Monroe. And I'd also like to remind people here in Monroe that when they first moved to Monroe, some of these people, 30, 40 years ago, and their kids went to school here, they voted yes for their budgets. Their schools were a lot newer. They didn't need work. These schools have been neglected over year and year and year, and we have holes in our roof. We have buckets in places. And it's time to fix them. And I think what we all have to remember, every kid deserves a good place to go, a safe, good place to go to learn. And I just, I thank Steve for putting out his budget. He did a great job, along with his staff, and Jim for you. So I hope everybody comes out to vote, because the turnout was only 31.8%, which was still pretty good. But 31.8% out of 12,000 people, that's still pretty pathetic. You're given the right to vote, use it. Please come out and vote. Pass the budget. Thank you.
Kelly Plunkett. I have a couple of things. One would be full-day kindergarten. I think that there's a lot of misconceptions out there that that's a nicety and that parents are using it as a way out for paying daycare. And the reality is that it's not a want, it's a need. If you're having Common Core standards that are being placed upon us, where we're going to be, the success of our students are measured against not only the other towns in Connecticut, but across the nation. The curriculum that is written is for half-day kindergarten, is for full-day kindergarten. By leaving our students at half-day, we're 40% behind the minute they walk into first grade. That's not a want. That's an absolute need. And I think the Board of Ed the members have been pretty adamant in our voting and in our discussions that that is not something that we want to see cut. Where I do see a problem is what Darrell was mentioning about getting the parents out to vote. Shame on those parents who have 4 children in the school system getting over $40,000 worth of education for their children who didn't come out and vote. At least vote. I can't tell you to vote yes or vote no. You know where I stand. But shame on you for not even coming out. I know there's a lot of heat being given to the list of parents who did or did not come out and vote. This is a town where you absolutely have the right to say how much money is spent and where it's spent. And you have to come out and voice your opinion year after year, whether you want to do it or not. And it's a shame to not come out and vote, give your opinion. It's a shame to see people whose children have graduated and now they vote no. But when I was voting and I didn't have kids in the system, I voted yes, and I supported your children. Your children were supported. Your grandchildren will be supported. It's all about continuing the growth of every child, not just your own. I say it constantly. The people of Monroe need to stop voting with their wallets, and they need to vote with their hearts and what's right, and think about the whole picture. It's not just about your wallet. I know that's hard to hear sometimes, because that extra $10, that extra $20 a month is not going to be easy to find. But people need to stop looking at what's in it for me, what's in it for my child, what's in it for my household. How about looking at the town as a whole? How do the schools being rated so high benefit my house so that when I retire and move south, I get the best amount for my house that I can? People moving in, businesses wanting to come in. It's not just about schools. It's not just about economic development. It's not just about sewers. It's the whole picture. So we need to stop nickel and diming and voting with just a few, worrying about a few dollars, and think about how every tiny piece of this all plays together and comes into making this a community and a town, not just a community of people who pit against each other every spring.
George.
George King. This is on. I came in late. I don't know if constituents are going to be allowed to speak tonight.
Yes, it's going to be Board of Ed first, and then Town Council, then Board of Finance.
Okay, good. That's who I like to hear from. So I think that it's difficult to look at a budget that fails, especially after the last 2 years where it passed on the first try, and just send it back out there. I think that's a tough task. And the economy is not exactly in the best shape right now. That said, though, I think that when we look at the education budget and what Jim gave us initially, and then what we tried to lean up from there, I think this was the best thing that we could put forward. I think it's lean. I think it's got the things in it that I think, as Jeff said, we need to run the district. It's got full-day kindergarten. It's a must-have. I was a product of the Monroe school system, so and I'm happy to be serving here. And it's got security measures in it that we need to move this district forward. So I'd like to see more support, more folks come out and vote and make their voices heard. And I'd like them to voice their concerns or their support tonight.
Right. While the Board of Education is coming up and the Town Council is coming out, I too would like to thank the Board of Education, because just a few years back, for those of you who haven't been with us for a long time, in the town, I should say, the feeling was that the Board of Education was fractured. I've never seen a group of people work together better in my terms, and I have to tell you, a lot of it is because of Jim Augustine, the leadership that he's brought, the financial background that he's brought, and the support of the town. You guys deserve it. You've done a great job. Again, there used to be much higher budgets with not a lot of the infrastructure things done. My hat's off to you as a Board of Education. Again, we might not always agree. We can disagree, but we do it respectfully. You've heard tonight a lot of different ideas, a lot of different philosophies, and that's a good thing. But you're very respectful of everybody, and the town deserves to back you. So I thank you very much. And now the Town Council. The Town Council can come up. Right, musical chairs here. We'll start off with the Vice Chairman of Town Council.
Yes, my name's Deborah Heim. I'm Vice Chair of the Town Council. As you know, the Town Council received the budget from the Selectmen. We adjusted by cutting the increase in spending on the council side, approximately $475,000. The taxpayers of Monroe need a balanced approach to fix its neglected past, and it can't be done in just 1 or 2 fiscal years. The Town Council set out to make some adjustments to the First Selectman's proposed admissible budget, which was exactly what we did. We increased some line items, reduced the increases in others, eliminated some altogether. Although the budget was $175,000 less in spending than the budget presented to us, it still accomplished a lot of some of the higher priorities. This budget was sent to the Board of Finance, providing the uniform school resource officers in all the public schools, included funding for increased security and technology, provide a modest increase in the hourly rate of part-time library aides, increased the legal budget, provided small increase to the salaries of the paid elected official, provided programming for our seniors, and increased the funding in our volunteer fire departments by approximately $28,000, adding funding and to continue improvements in Wolf Park, and created a rolling stock program so that we could address our vehicle needs year by year instead of all at once. As you know, the Board of Finance decided to put back much of our spending reductions made by the council. After a brief caucus, the Republican Town Council members feel that you should revisit the adjustments that we made to the budget before it goes out to the second referendum. We believe that by restoring the cuts in spending that we made during the budget workshops, the voters will be able to support a tax increase presented to them.
Did you have anything specific? If you're going to make cuts, can you, or
Well,
make
we made our
adjustments?
cuts at the workshops.
Okay.
We did the line items. What our caucus said, but revisit our cuts that we made in line items that we presented to the that went to the Board of Finance, and take from those cuts that we suggested that during the workshops.
Right. Okay.
Thank you.
All of us are fully behind that statement that our Vice Chairman read.
Okay.
Your name?
And I'm Tony Unger.
Frank Lido, Town Council. Again, as Ms. Heim indicated, all the Republicans are behind that statement. We collectively collaborated on that statement, and I believe all of us are setting forth our opinions based upon that statement. But I would like to say, I do strongly encourage everybody to get out and vote. Without voting, you don't really have a right to make statements one way or the other with respect to this budget. I hear a lot of people talking, but clearly the numbers speak for themselves, so I would encourage everybody to get out and vote one way or the other.
Okay, before it goes on, is there any priority? I know because you did have a lot of other adjustments. I don't like to use the word cuts. Is there any other adjustments that you have prioritized as far as you want us to look into everything, or is there any priority of what you feel is more important or less important?
You want to speak to that? Again, we went through a lengthy process,
Right.
many budget workshops. We believe, we voted on the budget. The Republicans that did vote for that budget felt that the budget we put forward after our workshops was the budget that we would support, that we felt that our constituents could support.
Okay.
So we would, again, strongly encourage you, the statement says feel, but I would like to change those terms to strongly encourage you to go back and look at those areas that were cut. I believe it was almost $500,000 in cuts, and I think most of those cuts were restored in that budget by the Board of Finance for some good reasons and some other. So I would encourage you to go back and look at those cuts, and I do think that you need to responsibly put out a budget that does take into consideration the vote that did take place, and I think that the budget needs to be reduced. And again, the areas that I think that the Republicans suggest that you reduce have already been vetted through many, many workshops and voted on. So I'd hope that you look at those areas.
Debbie Duchess, Town Council. I'm going to just echo what my fellow Republican Town Council members said, but I would also state that a number of the line item votes that we took and were on that $475,000 reduction list were a majority consensus across party lines. So I would strongly encourage you and strongly encourage voters to come out on April 23rd.
Okay. My name's Dee Dee Martin. I'm the minority leader on the Monroe Town Council. And for the sake of brevity, a statement from the 3 Democratic members of the Town Council. Ray Knapp, seated to my left, Nick Kapoor could not be here this evening, and myself. We fully support the many aspects of this budget: public safety concerns, increases to fire safety, educational enhancement, to cite a few. But we strongly feel that the voters have spoken, and in our opinion, a non-voter is a no vote. So reductions in the bottom line have to be made. Whereas this meeting is to gain input from elected officials, per the Charter, Chapter 8, Section 3, all revisions shall be made by the First Selectman. We hope the First Selectman will make every effort to keep key educational proponents intact, especially in regard to full-time kindergarten. Given that charter mandate, we do not feel it's up to elected officials to give you a spreadsheet where we feel cuts should be made, but we suggest the First Selectman try to keep his revisions targeted to areas in the past that have received the greatest percentage increases within Town Hall. Our concerns with this budget are not reflected in its particular content, but rather our concerns are in its presentation. Over the past many weeks, the Town Council undertook unprecedented action of holding separate meetings with individual department heads within Town Hall, the only side of the budget that we as Town Council members are mandated to address. The department heads were open and appeared eager to share their needs, although were somewhat restrained by the directive from the First Selectman's office not to share with us their requests prior to submitting their budget to the First Selectman. Nevertheless, the exercise was eye-opening and educational, and from this process, we proceeded to our council budget meetings, followed by Board of Finance budget meetings, where every line item on the town side for the council and both sides, town and education for finance, were discussed. Here's where we feel the process falters and where we need to address our concerns. As the Chief Executive Officer of the Town of Monroe, the First Selectman is required by Charter, Chapter 8, Section 3, in the proposed budget to provide, quote, an explanation by the First Selectman of the proposed budget and the fiscal policy proposed by the First Selectman, and also, quote, recommendations of the First Selectman concerning all proposed town expenditures and capital projects, end quote. Unfortunately, what transpired was the First Selectman missing 3 meetings in their entirety and then leaving an additional 2 meetings early. Questions raised were constantly not answered by the Chief Executive Officer, but directed to the Finance Director or other staff. Please bear in mind the questioning was from both sides of the aisle and intended to clarify separate line items requests. The residents of Monroe need to be made aware of the needs of the community concerning seniors, library, education, recreation, zoning, public safety, and all town departments. And for that, we need not only an engaged electorate, but an engaged and active leadership. It's not too late. We urge the First Selectman, as we approach the second referendum, to reach out to the community again, not merely by social media, but in person. Get to the people one-on-one in groups, schools, clubs, anywhere people will listen, and in any manner possible. Ask to be part of a conversation with any part of the community that will allow you to explain and defend the budget you are presenting to them. Thank you.
My name's Ray Knapp, Town Council. I echo Ms. Martin's statement. I would just like to bring up a couple of things. There are many projects that the residents have asked for, and that's within the budget. And we ask for the projects, and then when the money has to be spent to pay for them, they're knocked down. So you got to bear that in mind. we have other items that are priorities. We have police, we have fire. We're not even paying for the fire. We have a volunteer EMS also. We have a paramedic now. That's new this year. These are items that we have to have for the safety of all the residents in our town. It's not debatable. And both the Republicans and the Democrats work in unison with this. We have to work together, but you have to work with us. Again, I echo what Mrs. Martin said and what Mr. Lito said. We did it line by line. Look over what was suggested. Make your priorities. Cut what we can put on the back burner. Put it off for another year. Put it off for another 2 years. There are certain items that have to be done now. Schools security, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. And it's not just because of Sandy Hook. It's the residents, parents in Monroe that are demanding security in all schools now. Thank you.
Okay, I too, obviously you've heard from the town council, again, very diverse. They are volunteers. They did a great job asking a lot of great questions. In the interest of a little clarity though, I want to harken back to a couple of these budgets where once again, much, much higher increases, and we did exactly that. We put off everything. No maintenance, no, well, you can show me too. No maintenance, no road repairs. To put things off year after year have done nothing but cost us more. Obviously, we see that until the last couple of years, the system was broken. That's exactly why, as Ms. Martin said, I brought in the department heads beforehand. First time we've ever done that, to ask them questions. Now, I do have to admit, the Democratic Town Committee Chairman did FOI some information, but that was never, ever requested before by anybody on Town Council, and I gladly gave it, but I had to first talk to my department heads to make sure we're all on the same page. So once again, this budget is not, never could be, never should be political, but again, we wasted a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of referendums on much higher mill rate increases and never got anything done. The choice is yours. The choice is yours. If you want the services now that we've put off for years, they do cost more, no doubt about it. Nobody wanted a bond for roads, although most towns do it. But what we've done is successfully have a road maintenance repair program that we never had before. We now have a building maintenance plan that we never had before. We had capital projects committees. Nothing ever went onto the budget. It's there now. There is no hiding. Between myself and Mr. Agustin, we've done a great job getting the word out. And anybody who thinks that I haven't been out there in every single group that I can be, yes, I did miss a few meetings. One of them was we were getting honored at Monroe was getting honored at a St. Patrick's Day thing. After that, I went between the Board of Finance and the Town Council. Another time, unfortunately, I had a sickness in the family. I can't be everywhere. My family is number one. The third time, I don't know, but I can tell you a lot of people miss meetings. Yes, I'm the Chief Executive Officer. Yes, I stand behind this budget, but I don't stand behind politics. If any of you have a question, you've never, whether it's been social media, oh, by the way, we've never had that before. That's just one extra way to get on. Today we did a thing on Honeywell. Over 2,600 people saw that. Most of you responded. That's communication. That's what we need. Anybody thinks I'm not out in the public? Come into my office. I don't mean to get aggravated about it, but let's stop the rhetoric. This is a good, solid budget that's getting things done for the town of Monroe that, again, have been put off year after year after year after year after year after year after year. Oh, until then. We have a budget we can trust. Stop the rhetoric, stop pointing fingers, get out and vote. Can I have the Board of Finance next? Oh. Okay. I don't know how to use it. Red Sox jacket over there either. That's not a Red Sox jacket.
No,
Thank you.
champion. I'll move down. You take it.
All right, to the Board of Finance, now taking his seat is Chairman Mark Reed.
Thank you, Mr. First Selectman. I'm Mark Reed, Chairman of the Board of Finance. No. What is the Board of Finance's job in the budget process? Our job is very simple. We need to put out a budget that's in the best interests of the taxpayers and the town. Notice what I said, the taxpayers and the town. Could we put out a budget that would make the taxpayers just static and lower the rates to zero? Sure, we could. And the result of that would be a decimation of the town and the education system and the infrastructure. Could we put out something that just meets the interests of the town? Yes, and the tax rate becomes unacceptably high. So our job is to balance all those. Put the things together in the big picture and deliver to you the best, leanest budget that we can that balances both. And what do we have to balance? We have to balance safety and security. And one of the items that's being included in the budget is absolutely critical fire-saving equipment that must be replaced now. And security issues that you've heard already. Congratulations to the Board of Education and the superintendent for putting together a wonderful, transparent budget that has a quality education. And in fact, we made very few adjustments on that, but the budget includes those. We also have items in there for critical infrastructure, roads, buildings, repairs. Everyone knows, or should know, that deferred maintenance just costs you a heck of a lot more down the road. So in fact, what we have to do is balance the taxpayers' ability to pay versus what absolutely needs to be done to stop those costs down the road. So we do balancing acts of all these issues. So I'm showing a plot here that shows a plot of the mill rate increase versus tax reduction. And you'll notice the one that says a 0% reduction over the present budget that was put out has a mill rate increase of 4.24%. How much will that change if you cut some? To be able to reduce it to a 2% mill rate increase, that would be a cut of $1.5 million. That is significant damage. The Board of Finance did its job and put out there a budget. We took the First Selectman's budget and then through the town council. And yes, we did not agree with all the line item adjustments of the town council. We cut some, we adjusted some, we corrected errors, we adjusted classification errors and things like that. In fact, the bottom line is that the budget sent to us by the town council was reduced an additional $750,000 by the time it went out. So in fact, I'd say be very careful about restoring some of those because we have reduced it significantly beyond what the budget that we received. So I know that there might be some lore or rumors that in the past that budgets have been inflated so that when it comes to referendum, you can cut off some of the fat. Let me be very clear about there was no fat. Could you find a little bit here, a little bit there? Yes. How much are you going to change the mill rate? Look at that plot. You're only going to change it a few fractions of a percent. You're going to change it in the hundredths of a percent range just with small little cuts. To be able to have a significant budget reduction of 1% or so, that's nearly $1 million. Do the numbers. That's what the Board of Finance are. We're the numbers guys. Do the numbers. And the cuts, in our view, are unacceptable. So let me make this very clear. The Board of Finance, even though not all items are totally agreed upon by all things, in the end unanimously passed the budget that was put out, and unanimously passed a letter that was published, and unanimously stands by the viewpoint that any significant additional cuts to be able to change the mill rate any significant amount will cause damage. Read my lips, it will cause damage. So, thank you.
Hi, John Ostrzewski, a member of the Board of Finance. I don't want to belabor the points that Mark already made. They were all valuable points. I agree with them entirely. I just want to add that all of our sessions were open to the public for participation. We did listen to input from members of lots of different parts of the town, as well as administration, and we were I think, very responsive to needs that we perceived that were out there in making our changes, and very sensitive to needs that were brought to our attention to not make changes to. And I also agree and want to reiterate that any changes to the budget that would make any difference to someone's mill rate would negatively impact the critical needs and services in the town.
Hi, Scott Onis. Just want to play a little bit more with the numbers of what Mark shared. It seems like the past 2 years, the magic number has been about a 2% mill rate increase. To get down to a 2% mill rate increase, that's a $1.5 million cut. Just to put that in perspective, in scope, and this is not at all what I'm recommending, but to take $1.5 million out, you could take the Board of Ed's increase of $1.6 million out. That's the total increase of the Board of Ed. It can't be done because there's contractual agreements. There's a strong agreement that full-day kindergarten is the right thing to do. Maybe put it a little differently, the town increase is $700,000. That only gets you halfway to $1.5 million to get down to that 2% increase. We were very prudent the last couple of years, very tight. Maybe spoiled ourselves, spoiled the town with a 2% increase, but given the in fact, to be exact, 1.88 and 1.63. But we also held back on things that need to get done. Improvements in police, improvements in the fire department, SROs. There is a certain pent-up demand that's being addressed. But to everybody else's point so far, it is still a prudent budget. There's just external factors in the environment and contractual factors in some of the Board of Ed numbers that really prevent us from reasonably getting back to that 2% increase level. I'm not sure where $1.5 million would be found. I'm not saying that's what should be done or the target that should be sought, but looking at the past 2 years, that seemed to be the magic number, which I think we can't get back to this year.
Ted Quinlan. First of all, I want people to try to remember that members of the Board of Finance are financial professionals, controllers, CFOs, treasurers. We actually literally have a rocket scientist on the board.
That'd be Mark Reed.
We reviewed both the Board of Education and the town budgets using that professional training. I've done a lot of budgeting. I look at a budget based upon the services that are to be provided, and then whatever it costs to provide those services is your budget. If you choose to change your services, then you change the budget. But I'm not in the position here to say that I would change the services that we recommend. When I look at a budget, I also look at what it costs to operate on a current basis, but I also look at what it costs as an investment for the future. This year, I look at things like security for our children, launching children with every chance to succeed in their future, mental health initiatives that have been neglected in the past, equipment for our firemen to operate safely, and not only have them operate safely, but the houses that they're supposed to be saving with us in them are safer. And then investing in infrastructure, which saves money in the long haul. It also increases the value of our property. I didn't agree with every line item in the budget at the level that it was funded, but now is the time to act. We have gone through everything in great detail. The people that were charged with coming up with the budgets for their areas have spoken. We've looked at them independently and have said, this is reasonable. So my recommendation is leave it as is, and let's be done with it.
All right. Before we have the public speak, I want to go back on something that Chairman Reed said, who is, yes, he is the rocket science, and he also runs a pretty big department. But the bottom line is, I heard a magic, the magic number. When I came in, there was always a magic number, and we always had to try to hit a magic number. As I showed before, it doesn't really matter. It's what the people can accept to pay. And I understand there's a lot of people who cannot pay, and I know there's a lot of programs to help them do that. But the bottom line is, you know, since I got here, I was told we couldn't get a police department. Well, we got that done. We couldn't fix roads. We're getting that done. We can't have a capital projects plan. We're getting that done. The bottom line is, all of our elected officials, whether Democrat or Republican, are endorsing a lot of areas of this budget. It is now up to you, but, you know, again, the system was broken. We are making every stride possible to fix that system. We're trying every stride possible to get the word out to everybody. I can't ask for anything more. I mean, I have friends that are Democrats, friends that are Republicans, friends that are unaffiliate, who support or deny this budget. If people want to vote no, I understand that, and I don't take it personal. But at least know the facts. The facts are there. They're up on websites. They're up on Facebook pages. They're up all over the place. This tonight, being on TV, shows that I want to reach out to as many people as possible, as do our elected officials. Again, they're volunteers. They've spoken. They're volunteers. They spend a lot of time, thousands of hours, and as a few people said, in very public forums. We make it very available to anybody in the public to come out and listen to us. I make it very clear to everybody that is walking this earth, if they have a question in Monroe, come talk to myself or the superintendent. And Mike Mangios today, the vice chair who couldn't be here, wrote a very succinct article on what Honeywell does. That was seen by literally probably 50,000 different people on websites. Social media is the way. I'd love face-to-face, but we're all busy. We all have a lot of things we have to do. I respect each and every one of your views. And now, if the public wants to come up, please take a seat up here, and I look forward to hearing from you. And when you come up again, please state your name, and please be respectful of everybody's opinions. And keep it to 3 minutes, if possible.
Where do you want me to sit?
Right there, sir.
My name is Bill Ehlers. I live at 12 Tollgate Road in Monroe. I've lived there for 45 years. Before I get into what I wanted to say, I was struck by comments from town council. I don't understand why they kept referencing party line. The Republican line is this, the Democratic line is this. I thought we were in a community.
Thank you.
We don't have parties. We should work together as a team. There seems to be a divisive nature when people talk that way. I took exception to it. I noticed that people around me also were saying, why party lines?
Thank you.
I think we could learn a lot from maybe what we do and what we shouldn't do. Getting back to the point. Since 1981, since 1981, I haven't had a student in the school system. Since 1981, I've paid my taxes. Of course I have. Since 1981, I voted yes on every school budget or every town budget that's come across. Some people would call me a fool. I'd rather call myself responsible.
Thank you.
I think that's the way we work. As I said before on the party lines, I think what I'm trying to get across to, and I think what I'm trying to define is the word community. We're in a community. Monroe is a good community. I live here. I've retired now for 13 years. And why do I stay here? Because I like the town.
There's a lot of us stay here in this town, and we stay here retired, and because we like it. We moved here first because our jobs were here, but then we continued to stay here after retirement because we like the town. I might add also, let's not continue with the rhetoric that seniors vote against the school budget. They don't vote against the school budget. My wife and I have been very supportive of the school budget or the town budget for years and years and years. Since 1981, we haven't had a child in I don't know how my wife votes sometimes, and maybe she doesn't want me to know. But that's okay. That we have respect for each other, what we have. What I want to lead up to is this. There's a reason why people stay in this town. And I think it's overlooked too often. After we reach 65 or whenever we retire, we stay in town because we like the town. But we like the town for some of the reasons that are being attacked. We have a senior center. I look on Patch and I see the attacks against the senior center, and I find that to be despicable. It makes no sense at all. Those people are paying their taxes. They haven't had children in school in years and years and years, and they pay their taxes and they support the town. I see the attacks, the attack on the library, and I should identify myself. I'm also chairman of the library board, and have been on the board for 26, 27 years, and I see the attack on the library. We submitted a budget that was increased to help with the part-time salaries. It got through town council, got through the selectmen, and it was cut by the Board of Finance. I don't see any sentiment in town to put any increase back in the budget. We would love to see it done for fairness and equity, but I don't see where that's going to happen. I just implore no more cuts. That building over there is an amazing building. It's run at less than about 8/10 of 1 penny of every tax dollar collected in town. Towns of our size, on average, are run at 1.8%. So ours is running at less than 50%, and it's being cut again. So I ask that be reconsidered. I know there's a lot of conversation about the trust and what it should do and what it shouldn't do. It's always been open. That information has been in town. I went through the archives and the letters that were sent to your director, Mr. Selectman, and to the treasurer 3 years ago, explaining everything, and they said, fine, we agree with it, and then it was opened up again. I wish what we had proposed had gone through, and then in the ensuing months, we could have opened it up for debate, clarification, proper meetings, and explained it. But it wasn't done that way, and I think that was most unfortunate. In any event, please just remember one thing about the town, and I ask people to do this. Make the town hospitable and a community for people of all ages. If I were to sell my house right now, somebody would come in with 2.5 children on average, and instead of the taxes I pay, it would be at least $25,000, $30,000, probably $32,000, $35,000 expense to the town, with maybe taxes of $10,000 or $9,000 to offset that. That's a loss. You don't want to drive people like us out. Steve, you and I are neighbors. We're the best thing that ever happened to this town. I'm not talking about our position and what we do for the town and what we do for each other. I'm talking about from a monetary standpoint. We're the best thing that's ever happened to this town, and we shouldn't forget that people need other things like the parks, like senior center, and like the library. So let's not continue talking about just one episode or one facet of the town. Let's talk about the whole thing as a community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. And again, anybody who doesn't know Mr. Ellers, go down across from the Children's Library. The room is named after him, and there's always great community projects down there. Right now, there's an art show. Our children have had their art shows there. But the one thing I do want to say, getting back to the seniors and what Mr. Ellers said, I'm at the senior center a lot, not only because I'm going to be there in a few years, but I actually, you know, Barb Yeager's done a tremendous job down there putting out programs. And yes, there is a little bit of increase this year to try to invest in some new programs because a lot of us are getting older. Well, hopefully we're all getting older. But, you know, and we're getting wiser, and we want programs that actually meet our needs. But the one thing I can tell you in talking to many seniors over various lunches and just stopping in there to see how the computers are working, thank you, Jack, for getting them Wi-Fi. It was a great thing after many years. But many of them do vote yes. Many of them do get active in the community or have been active in the community. And so, again, I read, and again, I respect all of the media here tonight, but when I see and again, I call them the anonymous cartoon characters bashing on things, you know, that's not a good reflection of our community. We have a great community with some great people that work very hard that are afraid to announce what they want to do because they're going to get bashed. That's wrong. Again, we need to work together. It's one town, one budget, one town, school or whatever. But getting to the library, you know, that's the second place where I go so much because we have a great children's library, and a lot of you that are parents out there I see, I go down there just to see all the stuff that has been donated to the children's library. You know, I go upstairs and I see the business people who may be out of work and they're looking at the new Business Resource Center. So there's a lot of positives. We can always look at the negatives, but again, budget after budget after budget, we neglected a lot of things. Again, I can't tell you how much I support this budget, but I think you're getting it. I'm a passionate person about this. When I see people like Mr. Ellers, yes, we're neighbors, but Mr. Ellers, almost every house that's been sold has 2 or 3 kids coming in. And we've got to make that attractive for people. We've got to make sure that the restaurants that we have, there's like 63 eateries. A lot of people, and I'll get off on that in a second too. We were just at a restaurant the other day, and some Trumbull people said, you have all the restaurants up here. We come up here to eat. We need our residents to go to those restaurants. We need our residents to support our stores that we have. And that's what's going to make this economy better. But we need to be positive moving forward together. Anybody else?
My name is Kay Inderdonen. I live at 39 Hillside Lane, and I have a prepared statement. I have lived in Monroe for 51 years, long enough to remember Monroe's citizens donating bricks and raising money to build our very first library. From that time until now, the tradition of respect for and pride in our library continues. I've been an employee of the Edith Wheeler Memorial Library for 13 years in the children's room. I've had the privilege of seeing children grow into adulthood with a love of reading and learning and a genuine affection for the library experience. And we also see older generations sharing that joy, parents and grandparents in a place they are proud of. Unfortunately, the library cannot operate on affection. It needs funds adequate to serve the people of Monroe, all the people, actually, from birth to death, with books and materials, of course, but also as a learning center, a cultural center with entertainment and enrichment, a problem-solving center, and more. All of the boards and commissions in question tonight have been furnished with statistics on our circulation and the funds required to continue. Several people tonight have mentioned the fact that there might be people looking to move to Monroe and they would be considering the quality of life. I think in addition to the schools, the quality schools, Wolf Park, and I think the library is a very nice selling point, and people do visit the library when they are shopping for a home in Monroe. Mm-hmm. The cuts to the library budget leave our increase at 0. and those cuts will prove to be disabling. We need to be able to do our job and to provide the kind of library that Monroe citizens deserve. As a resident of Monroe and a library patron, I'm urging that the funds requested be restored. They are crucial to the operation of this remarkable facility. Thank you.
And I promise, thank you too, Kay. I do want to tell you that the woman that just spoke was our town clerk for many, many, many years, also a great volunteer. We owe people like her a debt of gratitude, because without people like her, we couldn't be moving forward. Now, we can agree to disagree, but she's right about a lot of different things, and I have a lot of respect for it. I think we all should. Again, respect, working together. Anybody else?
Steve Shapiro, 42 Harvester Road. I usually speak at most meetings on public participation, and I haven't said anything about the Board of Education. And I'd like to regress a little and thank those that negotiated the contracts 3 years ago, or 2 years, probably 3 years ago, when I believe it was like 0, 1, and 2. But people got to remember, when it was 0, our budget was going to be 0. When it was 1, our budget was going to go up a little, and it was 2, our budget was going to go up a little more. Last year, the superintendent's office, even though there was a slight increase in the Board of Education budget in dollars due to Mr. Agustin and his team, they were able to have a credit of $531,000. So when everybody gets up here and says that we had 0 increase last year, the taxpayers had a 0 increase. The Board of Education had some increase in dollars spent. So the increase they are showing this year is even actually less than the percentage that they're showing on a factual accounting basis. I attended, along with Steve Kirsch, who I'd like to give high fives to for answering questions on Patch and answering the correct, both of us attended a lot of the workshops. And I found them very interesting, a lot of good information, and a lot of that information never got out to the public.
Right.
It really didn't. And that's why I wrote on Patch yesterday, the day before, that it would be helpful if Mike Manos wrote something. I was glad, not because of me, maybe you already did that. The response I've heard in town today was very positive. And I think that's part of our problem. A lot of people in the Board of Education, the superintendent, they spend hours upon hours upon hours, and the communications to the actual voters is what's missing. It's missing tremendously. Also, having attended the town council meeting and the Board of Finance meeting, I think everybody should have the same clock in the basketball game as everybody else. And I think that the information that was supplied to the town council was not the same information that was supplied to the Board of Finance. I think that things were cut from the town council because they didn't have as much information in front of them as memos and things from our Board of Finance, our finance director of the town. It seemed like attending the Board of Finance meetings, there was a lot more, didn't you get this memo, didn't you get the spreadsheet, didn't you get that, while the town council can only go off what's put in front of them. Right. Hopefully in the past, maybe we need to look at the charter and do a combined Board of Finance, town council workshop, so our department heads don't have to stay there till midnight in some cases and repeat themselves time and time again. I went through and looked at the town side of the budget, Steve, and I came up with 13 line items that the amount in our budget this year and the amount that we're putting in the 13-14 has never been spent on those line items. Yet year in and year out, we just automatically put the same dollar amount, all the way from drainage improvements, P&Z consulting fees, Board of Commissions in total, inland wetland salaries and part-time. And I think if we're going to budget 5,000 and only spend 1,000, I know it has no effect on the actual mill rate, but we should take a look and go line item by line on them. There's probably $50,000 or $40,000 in those few 12 or 13 categories. But the two items that really, if you will need to reduce the budget, I think the two items you really need to get more information on that was not supplied to the public or to the department managers, that's our insurance in the town side and our pensions in the town side. The insurance increased in the budget we're in now by $300,000 and $300,000 again in the budget we're proposing. That's $600,000, while for the past, in 08 and 09, it went up $100,000, 9 and 10, $200,000, 10 to 11, $100,000, 11 to 12, another $100,000. And we're putting $600,000 more in the budget went out to be voted on, that was voted down. The increase in our pensions, and I don't know how these are determined, all except I attended the meetings and I heard zero as explanations. Maybe the Board of Finance had more information than I was able to see, because our pensions went up from $177,000 in 11-12 actual to $381,000 in the current budget. Those are two areas you can look at. In giving some of my own personal opinions about things, I think the budget might have gotten a bad shake this year because of a lot of the media that came out was not positive. And I think the library hurt people in town. Now, I'm not an elected official, and I just show up and spew a lot of garbage that nobody really believes in anyway. But what I'm trying to say is that the people in town that go to McDonald's and go to Duchess and sit around and drink coffee and are semi-retired, not making as much as we used to make, read what comes out. We just need to communicate. Yeah. And I think that's what we need. One other thing I would add, we really need a revenue plan. We always talk about expenses, but all I hear is that the grand list went down and this went down and it's a bad economy and da-da-da. But let's talk about the revenue plan. Revenue dictates, it drives. I was glad that Jeff Gutman said, looking at the fiscal responsibility of the Board of Education, Mr. Agostine and his team has done a tremendous job. The only thing, I'll make one or two more comments. I think we got to talk about facts and not throw stones if you're an elected official. I never want to hear an elected official say anything negative about a senior citizen and a senior citizen voting no. Because we do, and because some people mistakenly speak, senior citizens get very negative about that. I think that from the Board of Education, which has 75% of the budget, I suggest this every year, there's one thing this town does. It supports its town. It supports its coaches, it supports its drama, it supports its band, and it supports its clubs. And if you want to get a yes vote out, give those coaches, drama teachers, band teachers, band supporters, and the club directors, give them the day off on April 23rd, have them stand at the poll and shake hands with the parents that show up. Yeah. And say, thank you for voting. I don't care how you vote. And I'll guarantee you that kid that wants to play basketball or wants to play field hockey or wants to play volleyball or they want to go shake hands with their coach and say, thank you, thank you, thank you. I don't know if it's just a suggestion. I'm usually radical. But as a coach, I've been radical, and like Gino, I've always won. Thank you very much.
All right, I promised I wouldn't do this, but that gentleman right there, again, we agree to disagree, but when he goes on patch, he uses his name. Steve Kirsch, agree to disagree, he uses his name. Use your name, it's a nice thing. As far as some of the other things, again, the guy Mr. Steve Shapiro was a longtime volunteer in his town. He's coached for years. He knows a lot of people in this town. But again, again, we agree to disagree, but the guy speaks his mind, and that's what we need people to do, face to face. Any more people? And just another patch reader that uses his real name.
Jim LaGuardia, 15 Pastor's Walk. I'm going to be a lot shorter than most others. Mr. Shapiro actually just commented on it. Something needs to come out before the vote. What's in, what's out.
Okay.
I had a lengthy conversation with another parent the other day, 2 days ago, who was under the impression that there was a $5 raise for the part-time librarians in this past budget vote. A lot of people, including myself, were still under the impression that there was a car in the budget.
There is no car in this budget for me. Forget it. It's gone. Thank you.
The rain is going to lead me to my next thing. Please don't cut the Board of Education budget drastically. There is a leak in the Stepney Elementary lunchroom. The kids sit literally feet from a drip every time it rains for a few days, for 2 school years running. The kids at the peanut-free table sit inches away from a drip into a bucket. I don't think that's acceptable. The last thing was, after what I'm generously going to call a misunderstanding of the library trust and how that works, I think the part-time librarians who have not had a raise for, I think it's 5 years, 7 years, deserve a 50-cent raise that they were supposed to have gotten before it was cut. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, a couple weeks back, I sat there at the Stepney Elementary PTO, and it was 3 days after a rainstorm, and the bucket was full and dripping. As far as a couple other concerns that were made, again, we heard before that our Board of Finance, they're all CEOs, controllers, rocket science. They go over every single item there is in the town side. Yes, they maybe get a little more information after. Again, we have a very depleted finance department. I keep saying that our departments are overworked, underpaid, and they work. I mean, I can guarantee you go back there now and there's some people there. I know Kay Interdona, when she was there, worked tirelessly. Our employees are some of the best in the state. Our Board of Education teachers, I guarantee there's some doing some paperwork right now. Again, we stop pointing fingers, we make things move forward, and I can guarantee you that our Board of Finance has gone over every single document, financial or not, to give the best representation to the town. Anybody else? I won't comment on anybody else anymore, I promise.
Since you said you wouldn't comment, that's safe. Amy Primarak, 320 Cross Hill. There's no one here except you.
Yeah, look to me.
I just wanted to address something that I hear every budget season, and it frustrates me terribly. I totally 100% agree that it is an absolute stereotype that seniors always vote no. But the other thing that I continually hear that frustrates me equally as much is that education advocates are selfish and that parents only care about the schools, and that young families somehow are a drain on our society. If you have 2 or 3 or 4 children in the schools, you are taking more than you're giving. Young families that I know volunteer at the food pantry. They raise money for Project Warmth. They spend countless hours working in times of crisis for our community. We have a Citizens Emergency Response Team that just came to Parents Council to talk about how regular citizens volunteer their time. We have EMS workers, we have volunteer firefighters. A lot of them are young people in this community. So I want to just push back on that as well, that seniors don't always vote no, and parents aren't always single-minded about the schools either. That being said, I've never seen, in all my years of following the budget, as much of a consensus at a post-budget meeting as I did tonight amongst all of our elected officials. The message was very clear. This was a good budget. there was very little room for error within it. When you have that kind of consensus, it makes you wonder, what do you do with a budget failure? In the past, it's always seemed to be kind of a game. Oh, there's fat in the budget. Okay, it failed. Let's reduce it. What's the magic number? How much? By the way, Mark Reed, wherever you are, thank you for making that extremely clear tonight. To have any significant savings, you have to do significant damage. So maybe this is the year. Maybe this is the year to stand up and say, this isn't a game. This is our community. This budget is not full of wants and nice to haves. It is lean. It is full of what we need. This is what we need as a total community, not just the town side and the school side, not as Republicans, Democrats. This is what the total community needs. Maybe it's time to take that consensus of all of our elected officials and stand behind the budget and get it passed. Thank you.
And I won't comment on Amy, but I can tell you again, at least since congratulations on your wedding this weekend, too. But again, the bottom line is we put out some very good budgets over the past couple years that have passed the first time out. I don't want to go back to the time where we go back 3, 4, 5 times, because that does cost money, $6,200. This added sheet on Honeywell that will explain, very, very rapidly in the next couple days. Hopefully you all saw it on social media, that we are getting the word out about the facts of that it is in the budget. But the main thing is that we used to have a very fractured town. We used to have a lot of people that you always knew were going to vote no, and they always were contentious or always going to vote yes. It is a very diverse group now. A lot of people who you'd never even think. My 93-year-old mother, actually mother-in-law, always votes yes for the budget because she wants her senior center, she wants her programs. People vote yes and no for various reasons, but it is so nice to, even on budget day, not to have people come up to you and basically, as we used to have high mill rates, that what do we get for our tax dollar? What we get for our tax dollar now is improved roads, is improved buildings. Forget the past. I know I brought it up before, but the past is gone. The past is broken. Politics should not even be mentioned in a budget, nor should it be. I mean, Jim and I are partners. The Board of Education and I are partners. The Board of Finance and I are partners. Town Council, we're partners. I mean, we can agree to disagree, but again, the rhetoric, the rancor, the political stuff, the seniors doing this, the pointing fingers, it's got to stop. We're one town. We've got to pass this budget. I support this budget 1,000%. I would love to put it back with no decrease at all. It's not going to happen. But any further decreases will make serious problems in our town. And as Mr. Reed said, do you want to cut $1.5 million out? Do you want to go backwards where we were before? I don't think so. I think you want a budget that gives you services, whether it's services for senior citizens, whether it's services for our youth. I coached for years. Our youth is still very important. We're trying to get more youth to come out and vote, to get involved in politics. Why would they involved in town government? Why would they want to be involved when all they do is get bashed? Monroe L. came out, put forward their views on the budget. What happened? Anonymous cartoon characters bashed them. The rest of the school said, I'm not doing this. That's the wrong attitude. The right attitude is come up. If you don't like something, man up, woman up, tell me. But we have a great budget. We have a great town. We have a great community. Young, old, not even born. They're all good people. There's got to be other people coming up.
Kelly Plunkett, 34 Kettle Creek Lane. My comments before were primarily Board of Ed related, but I want to make sure that some of the comments about the town side are also taken into consideration. I had the opportunity earlier this week to address a Girl Scout troop on the topic of women in government. And it was interesting because I laid out, this is Board of Finance, this is how many members, this is Town Council, and we talked about, they all knew you, Mr. Varick, which was, they all knew that you were
I go to many Girl Scout and Boy Scout meetings.
Yeah, their hands all shot up when I asked them who was the first selectman. And one of the things that I asked them was, well, they want to know how much power you had, and did you really run the whole town? And I explained that, no, he works in conjunction with all these other groups. And explained that different members of different boards, commissions, councils have different opinions about certain topics. And I asked them, what happens when you have to do a class project and you're put with somebody who wants things done differently than you, or they think something's more important than you do? And they all knew that the best way to get that done was by working together and cooperating. And I have to say that this budget definitely was one of the ones that sticks most in my mind of the last 4 budgets that I've sat in, about the collaboration and the cooperation between Board of Finance and Board of Ed and the First Selectman, so thank you. Comment on the senior center. I never, ever, ever want to see a dollar cut from that senior center. Barb Yeager runs one of the tightest budgets in the town. And I remember a few years back when Mr. Boozy had to cut the number of lunches that were being served there. And that devastated me, because even though I don't have parents that are older, I know I'll be there. And for me, I can only imagine the loneliness and the solitude that they must experience at times. And that might be the best meal that they have that week, is those lunches, and to not offer them as frequently is just a shame. The social aspect, those who are widowed and they don't get out, but they don't drive anymore. The social aspect, the one thing that keeps them going is the ability to go to the senior center and do Wii bowling or do Zumba or get their hair done. I never want to see a dollar cut from the senior center. Same thing with mental health. I know that was a request this year that was fully endorsed by the Board of Finance. That's an ageless topic. A 60-year-old that's out drunk driving because they're stressed out about whatever situation they're dealing with is just as dangerous as a 16-year-old out drinking and driving. And mental health will be proactive. That is a way for us to be proactive, not reacting. I'd also like to reiterate some of the other comments from folks about stop the stereotyping. It's not all seniors that vote no. Absolutely not. I'm so tired of hearing that that's how everything falls like dominoes, and same thing with parents. There are plenty of parents that come out and vote yes. As someone who has stood in front of the polls with my little vote yes signs and been yelled at and told I was crazy, they're not all wrong. It's not all parents that vote yes. All I ask is that whether it's a town meeting, a Honeywell contract, or a budget referendum, is to make an intelligent, educated vote. I heard from too many friends who were on the list that signed the Honeywell petition that didn't understand what they were signing. And that's a shame. That's a shame that now, because their name was on a list, they're being educated. I hope no one ever signs a petition that they're not fully educated on, or places a vote for something that they're not fully educated on. Almost everyone here that spoke tonight, too, which was interesting for public participation, almost everyone commented that they had conversations word of mouth about this budget. And all I can think of is imagine how many educated votes there would be if people actually went to the source of the information versus relying on hearsay and, what do you call them, the cartoon names? The cartoon names on Patch.
Anonymous.
The anonymous. I'm sure that Mr. Augustine has shared the statistics from the parent survey about where parents find their information. The number that people go to on Patch is staggering. And that puts a lot of pressure on you, Bill. But it would be nice to see more educated conversation like Mr. Shapiro and yourselves to share the information that they're finding because they're attending the meetings, or increase attendance at the meetings. I would love to see more educated votes instead of hearsay votes. Thank you.
And I do want to say one thing. For the first time in many years, or first time ever, because there wasn't really a major Facebook push, but our budgets, once they got approved by the Town Council, or Board of Education, Board of Finance, Town Council, Board of Finance, and then approved to go out to the voters, every one of them have been on monroect.org. Every one of them is on the website for anybody to pick up at any time. They've been on Patch. They've been in the Courier. They've been on, I have a weekly newsletter You know, I don't want to push that too much, but it tells a lot of the positives that we're doing in this town. It's been in Ian Monroe. You know, we have some excellent media sources. What did we do before the internet? You know, everybody should be an informed voter. It's out there enough. We have fabulous Parents Council, PTOs that get the word out. And I just remembered where I was the third time that I missed the town council meeting. We have in our town hall, Center for Women and Families. As a matter of fact, I just met with the new representative for Center for Women and Families today, along with the we have a new RIASAP member. These are boards and commissions across the state, regional boards and commissions, and this is why I guarantee you mental health will not be cut out of the budget. I don't care how many times it goes down. If anything, the tragedy from 12-14 showed, we need more counseling services. We have to start talking to the Board of Education about getting more counseling services. Those are things that we cut out of the budget for stupid, stupid reasons. If you ever lose a parent or lose a child and you have no place to go, with our seniors have no place to go, the town, that's what we pay our tax dollar for, to give services. That is a tremendous service. But that's where I was on one of the other nights that I missed the town council meeting. You know, I try to make every meeting as possible. I try to get as to many things as possible. But when we have Center for Women and Families, and that's what this ribbon is, it's against violence, male violence. This is something I stand very strong about, and if I miss a meeting because of something like that, so be it. But I stand behind our community, I stand behind our region, and I really stand behind our budget. So, anybody else?
Fran Welch, 97 Greenwood Lane. I'm glad to hear that you say you're going to stand by your budget, because 340 votes is not a lot. That's all. It's 170 to turn to the yes side. And I have to agree, and I've said this to you before, so this isn't the first time you're going to hear this. People read the patch. People read the comments on the patch, and there was a lot of misinformation about what was in this budget. Right. So let's set the record straight. Let's get the details out, the right details. And perhaps 170 of those people that voted no are going to vote yes. And it's also, we have to get the vote out. We have to do a better job of getting the vote out. We have to get the parents out and the seniors out. I don't know if you go to the senior, I know you go to the senior center, but there's 55 plus communities that have community centers. Go talk to them. And maybe you could convince them to come out. Get the buses to get there, to get them to come and vote, and try to convince them why this is a good budget. Right. And I am so happy to hear all of our elected officials support this budget and stand by this budget. And I think, there aren't a lot of people here at this meeting, unfortunately. I'm not sure how many people are watching it at home. So I don't know how public it's going to be that our elected officials are saying, there is no room. This is a tight budget. This is a good budget. That has to be made public. I know signs, people have different thoughts on signs, but you know what? Put a sign in your yard. Vote yes for Monroe. It doesn't have to be red. It doesn't have to be red and white. Just a vote yes for Monroe. And that's what this budget is. It's going to move Monroe forward. So I implore you, think about it, Steve. Think about putting it back the way it is. It's 170 people to get from a no to a yes. A couple hundred more people to go out to vote. That's all it is.
Thank you. And Lord knows I love red signs. As far as this meeting tonight, it is going to be on our website as soon as possible. It is going to be on social media sites as soon as possible. I want everybody in Monroe that can hook up to the internet to see this. I want everybody in Monroe to be able to go on to the patch and go on to the Monroe Courier Online and go on to Ian Monroe and see this presentation. That's why it's on TV. First time ever, because I feel that people should be heard, should be seen, and should be supportive. At this time I can't tell you if there's going to be cuts. I can tell you there might be some adjustments, which I don't like using the word cuts. But again, there may be issues with our insurance or our pension that we'll look into. We will look into and have looked into, continuously looked into. The budget, after you guys vote it, the next cycle starts. You know, we go to our department heads and we say, hey, what worked, what didn't work? I can guarantee you that every dollar, if it's not spent someplace, just like your own wallet, if it's not spent on a roof, it's spent on something else. Drainage, you know, that is an ongoing thing. Drainage breaks all the time. We have 140 miles worth of road. That's more than just a few years ago, and we have the same staff fixing it. So that's what you got to look into. You know, nobody wants to add people, but we have to be efficient. You know, I have a finance department which is down one person, and I want to thank Carl Tomczyk and Heidi Mead. Heidi Mead is working on something called Munis. When we finally get Munis up and running, your budget's going to change. It's going to look different. It's going to feel different. It's going to be explained much, much different. But the information has always been there. We have countless amount of meetings on Board of Ed, Town Council, Board of Finance, and if every one of you came to a meeting, every meeting you possibly could come to, you'd hear a lot of things and how people think. We don't hide anything. That's been suggested that we hide things. The budget has been on various websites and various sites, and people still will misunderstand it. You know, I can't control what people understand or don't understand. We get it out more than we ever did before, and yet things still get misunderstood. And that's okay. Ask a question. Come see us. We don't hide from anybody. We're there. Anybody else?
Hello, my name is Patricia Shea. I live at 294 Barnhill Road. I've been a Monroe resident for 42 years. Before that, I was a public school teacher for 35 years. I no longer wear that hat. I listen to you support and thank and encourage the Board of Education and the superintendent for the budget that they presented tonight. You lauded them for the good work that they have done. You did the same thing to the Board of Finance. You said that they have done an outstanding job and presented a budget to the town that is significant and meets our needs. I encourage you as the first selectman to, if it's absolutely necessary that you cut the budget, that it be minimal, because you support the budget that your boards presented. We can't sustain huge cuts. You heard the devastation that would be presented. So I encourage you to have the courage not to cut the budget or to cut it in a minimal amount. Do you have the courage to do that? That's the first thing. Second thing, I'm also a volunteer on the library board. Our library, like our public school system, provides a level playing field for all town residents. I encourage you not to provide or sustain an additional cut to the library. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right. Well, I'd like to thank you all for coming out tonight. And April 23rd is going to be a huge day in Monroe. We have 2 different ballots going out, one for Honeywell and one for the budget. A lot of work has gone into both of them. A lot of progress will be made once we finally pass the budget. I encourage you all to come out. And if you have any questions at all, please feel free. If you don't feel like writing anything down tonight or talking tonight about it, again, shoot us an email, because you will get answered. Or those of you on Facebook, shoot it on Facebook message. The word is out there. As far as courage, we put a good budget out, and we will stand as much by it as possible. So I want to thank you all for coming out.